But as CNN's Jake Tapper shows us, Mr. Trump has long had trouble showing respect for veterans of the armed forces.
The loss of a service member and the pain of his or her family is part of life in this nation that we at The Lead try to treat with appropriate sensitivity and respect. Now, we do not know what exactly President Trump said to Maisha Johnson, the grieving widow of Sergeant LaDavid Johnson. Congresswoman Frederica Wilson claims the president said, quote, he knew what he signed up for, but I guess it still hurt, unquote, that the president did not seem to know Johnson's name. And the congresswoman further suggested that the president's words caused the widow to break down after the call ended. Johnson's mother tells CNN that that description is accurate. The president, however, on Twitter and to reporters denies this. He tweeted he had proof, and the White House today said that Congresswoman Wilson was trying to politicize a call to a widow and that those who heard the call on the White House staff found the president's words perfectly respectful. I mean, all of that really makes very little difference when you think about it. The family heard what it heard, even if the president was completely misunderstood. His attempt at comfort failed. Under the best of circumstances, these moments between a commander-in-chief and the family of a fallen service member are awful, just awful. And the problem that President Trump might have here, however, is that when it comes to sensitivity about service and sacrifice specifically, he's already made what critics have assessed to be some grievously bad decisions. You go back to 2015, his attack on Senator John McCain, who spent 5.5 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. McCain was tortured, he was despondent, at times he was suicidal. As the son and grandson of admirals, he would have been allowed. He was asked to leave early as a propaganda effort by the North Vietnamese, but McCain refused to do it in deference to the POWs who had been there longer. But this is how Trump saw it.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
Then, of course, there's Khizr and Ghazala Khan, the Gold Star parents of Army Captain Humayun Khan, who was killed in Iraq. He belittled them after their appearance at the Democratic Convention, after they took issue with Mr. Trump's anti-Muslim rhetoric. Then candidate Trump suggested that a fallen soldier's mother didn't speak at the convention because she was forbidden as a Muslim woman to speak. In actuality, as she later said, she was just too broken up to discuss the loss of her fallen son. Shortly after his inauguration, during a visit to the CIA, the president stood in front of the memorial wall there, where there are now etched 125 stars for fallen CIA officers, including one for former Navy SEAL Christopher Mueller, who saved the line of an Afghan commander before sacrificing his own. Another one for former Marine Major Douglas Zembiec, the so-called Lion of Fallujah, who was killed in Iraq. The president spent his time at the CIA in front of that wall, railing about media coverage of the size of the crowds at his inaugural.
It looked, honestly, it looked like 1.5 million people, whatever it was, but it went all the way back to the Washington Monument. And I turned on, and by mistake.
Amidst all this ham-handedness, the president this week falsely accused President Obama and previous presidents of never having phoned Gold Star families, in an apparent attempt to make himself look more attentive and compassionate, I suppose. And in the midst of that effort to depict himself in a glowing light, this current controversy, ironically enough, sadly burst onto the scene as just another political weapon used by the president and used against the president. This most personal and horrific experience, just one more piece of ammunition in the snark wars where nothing matters anymore except for scoring points. Instead of focusing on these fallen men and women and their families who will never be the same, we're focused on process and phone calls and letters and the spat. President Trump, when challenged on the fact that President Obama did actually call Gold Star families, not all of them, but some of them, he told one radio interviewer the following.
You could ask General Kelly, did he get a call from Obama?
And that's a reference to his chief of staff, retired Marine General John Kelly. Kelly and his wife Karen lost their son, Marine First Lieutenant Robert Michael Kelly, to a landmine in Afghanistan in 2010. And truly, what will honor the Kellys and the memory of Robert more than anyone debating whether Obama should have phoned them instead of writing them a letter is to take a moment to consider Robert Kelly and all of the men and women who serve our nation while considering these words, quote, sons like yours who serve are men and women of character who continue to believe in this country enough to put life and limb on the line without qualification and without thought of personal gain. And they serve so that the sons and daughters of the other 99% don't have to. No big deal, though, as Marines have always been the first to fight, paying in full the bill that comes with being free for everyone else, unquote. Those were the words of General John Kelly at a Veterans Day event for Marines in 2010. And what makes those words most remarkable, perhaps, is that he delivered that speech just 4 days after his beloved son Robert was killed. Now, I've learned on this job that telling the stories of troops and their families, that it's very important that we all choose our words very carefully when discussing these losses. And it's not just journalists and politicians. All of us need to consider the unimaginable that these families go through when we speak to them and when we speak of them. And if you don't take great care, and in fact, if you're reckless about these kinds of sacrifices, the kind of sacrifice you see on your screen right now, well, then people might not be willing to give you the benefit of the doubt if on one occasion your words come out wrong.